Guys, the Korra slander is getting absolutely insane, and this is coming from me who will laugh at almost any slander post against both Aang and Korra. But with the release of the leaked Avatar Aang movie, things have literally gone to a whole nother level. Like, I'm serious, this is the most deranged level of Korra slander I've ever seen, and people are pulling the craziest stuff from thin air just to hate on her because of the leaked Avatar Aang movie. So today I'm going to explain why the Avatar Aang movie has sent the Korra slander into overdrive, and I'm going to show you what's being said. So hit that subscribe button and let's get into it. Okay, so if you've been anywhere near the Avatar Twitter in the last few days, you already know what I'm talking about. The full leaked Avatar Aang movie in 4K is absolutely everywhere, and it's already racked up tens of millions of views. Absolutely everyone's talking about it and everyone wants to see it. And it looks like that was all it took to reopen every old wound that the fandom has been sitting on for the last decade. Because Avatar fans have never moved on from the Aang versus Korra debate. It was just buried and we waited for something to dig it back up. And a theatrical leaked Avatar Aang movie was exactly the thing to do that, especially because in the movie Aang does some absolutely huge feats in the Avatar state, and that is making people who don't like Korra be even more emboldened. And it's not just because Aang is back on screen, it's because a huge amount of the plot in the leaked movie is pulling directly from stuff that originated in the legend of Korra. We've got stuff about the spirit worlds being a visible part of the conflict, we've got Republic City as a setting, and of course the politics of the reborn Air Nation, and the whole question of what the Avatar's role in the modernizing world actually should be. So basically think about it like we've got all of the Korra plot points and storylines now being told in an Avatar Aang story. On top of that, the movie also has a sequence where Aang goes full Avatar state and absolutely demolishes the main villain along with basically anybody standing nearby him. Now we're talking the kind of overwhelming power that fans have been chasing the feeling of for 15 years. And once people saw that, they immediately looked back at Korra and asked where her equivalent moments were, because Korra's Avatar state is weirdly limited throughout her show. She gets beaten in it, she gets poisoned in it, and she loses fights that the Avatar state should absolutely be winning, and that's at least according to these Korra slanderers. So now that we've got a fresh reference point for what an Avatar at full power looks like in the new leaked Avatar Aang movie, everything Korra did is getting retroactively downgraded by people. People are calling her a weak Avatar, ranking her below Kyoshi and Aang, and even Roku without a second thought. So if you combine the movie leaning on Korra's world building while giving none of the glory back to her, and Aang putting on a power display that Korra never matched, and then you get this perfect storm that everything Korra did wrong or weird or cringe is being zoomed in on by the whole fandom. So let's get into the tweets. I'm going to show you exactly what people are saying. So the first one here is a tweet from Jimon. This one's pretty tame compared to the rest, but he's saying, a day in Avatar The Last Airbender where the fate of the world was decided. In Korra, it's just another complaint because the customer service is bad. He's basically saying in Korra, there were no stakes, nothing really big happened, but in Avatar, every day was about saving the world. Of course we know this is wrong. In Korra, there were big stakes, and in Avatar, we had episodes like The Great Divide where nothing happened at all and the world was not at risk. So this one's crazy. But I can see why the Aang movie has caused this. Then we have the one from Just Me here saying, don't forget, Korra threatened a non-bender with the Avatar state and he called her an empty threat. Not my Aang for real. So basically, if you don't know what happened in this scene, Korra went into the Avatar state to threaten this guy to hand over some information, but he immediately called her bluff and said, you're just bluffing, you're not going to do anything. And then Korra went out of the Avatar state and of course did not harm him. And people on Twitter are using this to say that Korra is too weak and that Aang would have killed him, which is absolutely wrong. Aang would not have harmed this guy just for information. And I don't even think he would have used the Avatar state to threaten him. So many people are using this as an example of why Aang is so much more powerful in the power scaling rankings, but this one is not a good example. And then we have one here which is absolutely crazy. I can't even read the full thing because it's that explicit, but it says Korra was more focused on, let's just say, having relations with her teammates than actually helping the world keep the balance. From the time the iceberg broke, Aang was being chased by the whole Fire Nation, led by Azula and Zuko, and still managed to learn all the elements and defeat Ozai. Aang is levels ahead. For so many reasons, this one is just insane. First of all, there's an age difference. Team Avatar in the original show were way younger. The ones in Korra were of course teenagers, so what do you expect? Now, that certainly does not justify some of the teenage love triangle stuff that we saw in Korra, but to have this as a power scaling debate is absolutely crazy. Korra's impact on the world was just as big. Then we got another one here from Mr. Bowles, and he says, Aang learned all 4 elements while being hunted by an entire nation. Korra lost her connection to the past avatars because she was moving like a distracted toddler. Look, you're not going to catch me justifying anything in season 2. I think that was an absolute mess from the writers. However, I don't really think it was her fault. I don't think any training could have stopped that from happening because that was spiritual actions and forces at play. I don't think any more training could have fixed that. Then we have a clip here which was for some reason taken down. It's not even from the new movie. It was actually from Korra season 4 when she was fighting Kuvira, and somebody put, to be fair, Korra has toxins inside of her mind, so she's nerfed. And then somebody showed this video saying, this is Korra without the poison, by the way. I don't know, sometimes it feels like Korra stans don't realize we all watched the same show, even if they didn't. We did. This would have been an embarrassment to Targa. Now, the clip is obviously not up anymore, so I can't show you, but the clip shown here was not too bad from Korra. It wasn't horrific. Like, look, she certainly has weaknesses, and this is a good thing because we don't want her to become like Rey from Star Wars. So, look, it's not the best fighting from Korra, but it's also not the worst I've ever seen. Then we got one that is 100% true. I fully agree with this one, and it's like, Korra Slander be funnier than Aang's, I'm sorry, because Aang Slander just sounds like some whiny complaints that just happen to be untrue. Korra Slander, on the other hand, is hilarious and true with like 255 million pieces of evidence to back it up. And to be fair, this is funny. The Korra Slander is hilarious. They be pulling absolutely anything to slander Korra. Alright, and then we're going to move to the funniest ones that I've ever seen. It's Korra going into the Avatar state, and then the tweet is just, Korra when a child is about to beat her at a spelling bee. Boom, she enters the Avatar state. Then the other one, Korra when she's losing rock, paper, scissors, entering the Avatar state. I'll give it to these guys, this is hilarious. Korra did invoke the Avatar state at some crazy times, and she was way more liberal with her usage of the Avatar state than Aang ever was. And even in the movie, in the leaked Avatar Aang movie, Aang was entering the Avatar state quite a lot for things that really, I don't know if they could be justified. But then in The Legend of Korra, she was doing it very often. And then for the final one, which was absolutely hilarious, the tweet says, Korra fans, the Aang live action sucked. Rest of the world producing more remakes. Aang fans, the Korra show sucked. The show ended and was never heard from again. I rest my case. This one is just crazy. Of course there's going to be more remakes for the original Avatar The Last Airbender. More people saw it when it originally came out. It had a huge cultural impact when it came out, and it was considered one of the best pieces of Western animation ever produced when it came out in 2005 to 2008. We have to remember, Korra only came out like 15 years ago. It hasn't had as much time to mature and get into the minds and the people that grew up with Korra. Of course, it was definitely weaker than the original season, just because of season 2, if anything. But I don't think it just means that there's nothing good in the series that could ever be adapted. And of course, it's just not as iconic. You could show anyone on the street a frame from Avatar The Last Airbender, and they would probably be able to identify which show it's from. If you show one from Korra, they'd probably say Avatar The Last Airbender. So those are pretty much all of the tweets I wanted to show you. Where do you stand on Korra slander? Do you think Korra deserved to be slandered? Do you think Korra is even worse of an Avatar than Aang was? Or is she on a pretty even level, but has just been screwed over by her circumstances, especially losing all of the past lives? I will never defend that decision from the writers. That was one of the stupidest moments in Korra and one of the stupidest moments in franchise history. So we can only hope now that the Seven Havens is able to reconnect the lives of Korra, and maybe if the lives are reconnected, maybe the slander will finally come to an end. And just remember, Avatar Parvati in the Seven Havens is only going to have one avatar to talk to because all of the other past lives have been cut off. So she's only going to have Korra for advice. And let me tell you, this is going to cause so much mayhem and chaos in the fandom. I've already seen tweets saying, I feel for Parvati. She only has Korra to call on for advice. She's going to be one of the worst avatars in history. So guys, brace yourself for the Seven Havens. It's going to be absolutely crazy. And that is all of the Korra slander and why the leaked Avatar Aang movie is causing so much Korra slander on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you want to see more videos just like this and more of the leaked Avatar Aang movie, hit that sub button and I'll see you in the next one.